But did that leave the rest of the city vulnerable in case of fire? Marcia Kramer joins us now with more on that story. Marcia, obviously this was totally unexpected, but the city reacted as usual.
The city reacted really terrifically, Ernie, and you can see that. But for long hours today, while hundreds of firefighters were occupied with the explosion at the World Trade Center, many firefighters had their fingers crossed that no other serious fires would break out because their hoses were stretched mighty thin. The explosion and multiple fires at the World Trade Center this afternoon tested the limits of New York's bravest. Not because they weren't prepared to deal with a disaster, they handled the rescue operation like the heroes they are, but because so many units were needed to combat the blaze and evacuate the tens of thousands of people who work in the area. An unbelievable 144 fire companies, engines and ladders, were at the scene in Lower Manhattan. That's 40% of all the equipment in the entire city, and that left shortages elsewhere.
When you have an operation, the equivalent of a 16-alarm fire at the World Trade Center, it stresses our system to the breaking point. We have to relocate companies, engine companies and ladder companies from Brooklyn and Queens into Manhattan, and we have to stretch the grid thinner than it already is.
Engines were especially scarce in Manhattan this afternoon. At 2:30 this afternoon, only 27% of the fire engines and 22% of the ladder companies were available to respond to alarms in that borough. And many firehouses miles away from the explosion look like this, empty. The fire department's manpower has been stretched so thin that trucks are being moved all over the city. Here at Engine 54, which bills itself as the pride of Midtown, the engine's from Washington Heights, and the battalion truck is from Queens. The situation was so bad during the afternoon that the fire department went into its most serious fallback mode. What that meant is that voice box alarms weren't answered. Only one engine was sent to investigate a pull box alarm, and only a limited number of trucks were sent to alarms that were telephoned in. What's the best way to get the attention of the fire department today?
911. Use the telephone. Don't depend upon a street box. Dial or call the dispatcher, the fire department dispatcher in the borough that you live in.
Well, within the last few hours, the fire department started getting back to normal. Only 50 engines remained at the scene. The rest returned to regular duty. Still, it's probably better to either call 911 or your local borough fire dispatcher to report fires tonight. That way you'll be guaranteed of a faster, more thorough response. And now joining us live from the command center at the World Trade Center is Fire Commissioner Carlos Rivera. Commissioner, your men have done an incredible job today, but a question for you now is what's happening with the investigation? What's the latest on the scene?
Well, the police department is doing that investigation. What I really am here for is to really refute the statements that you have made this afternoon. I thought that those statements were irresponsible. They certainly were incorrect in regards to the fire coverage. There's no other municipality in this entire country and probably in the world that has fire protection such as New York City. At all times we had at least 50% availability. That's what the firefighters are there for. They're there to provide fire protection, and they respond to fires when they need it. So I don't understand what people are saying, yourself and so-called union officials or high fire department officials. They don't know what they're talking about. That is totally irresponsible.
Well, Fire Commissioner, the reason we were doing that story was we were trying to point out to the public the best, most efficient way to contact the fire department in a time of great stress for your department. There was a time when you had almost 40% of your engines were down there.
It certainly didn't come across that way. It didn't come across that way. It sounded to me like it was a scare tactics. It was just an alarmist viewpoint and totally disservice to the people of the city of New York.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
All right, Marcia, thanks for bringing us that part of the story, and we also thank the Commissioner for coming on and giving us his view on the situation. Thank you.